Welcome to FailCraft, the podcast where we dive into the messy, real side of success and explore how setbacks become the stepping stones to growth and clarity. I'm your host, Ezekiel Feria, and today's guest is Adam Korga. Adam spent 20 years in the trenches of the IT industry. He has seen the digital world from the inside out, and he has a terrifying conclusion that most of our critical systems are held together by little more than hope and duct tape. Adam is a systems analyst and the author of the IT Dictionary and the bluntly titled Fuckup Almanac. But he isn't just here to talk about computers. He believes that the same bugs that crash a server, complexity, cognitive bias, and bad incentives are the same bugs that crash our lives. He argues that what we often call human error is actually just a system behaving exactly as it was poorly designed to do. He's here to talk about why smart people make stupid mistakes, why agile has become a bureaucracy, and how to become a BS detector in a world full of corporate fluff. So, Adam, I am very excited to welcome you to the show. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, Ezekiel. I'm happy to be here, and I hope I will have something interesting to say.
All right, it's an honor to have you here. So let's dive in, Adam. You have a quote that really struck me. You say that personal failure is often a predictable system outcome. I find that really interesting. In our culture, in society, when things goes wrong, maybe in the corporate setting, they try to find a scapegoat. They try to find someone who is responsible, and they fire the person who pushed the button. But you argue that this is a lazy analysis. In your opinion, are we blaming individuals for failing when they were actually placed in a system that was designed to crash?
Okay, so I will try to answer two questions here. First is that, especially in corporate world, language is kind of designed to obscure the reality, to make it sound professional, nice, and so on. And by the way, that's what IT Dictionary is about. It's definitely, you won't learn how to code, you won't learn anything strictly about technology. The satirical guide how to decode this corporate language. And as for the blame culture in fast-paced environment, having quick solution is desired. Finding a scapegoat, somebody we can put a blame on and move on, helps us feel better about the outcome. However, what I would like to argue about, and what entire series of Fuckup Almanac is about, is that in true engineering work, generally system design work, human error is almost never a root cause, because properly designed system should assume that the human will make a mistake. Machines also have some hiccups, network errors and stuff, and let's be clear, human also make mistakes. If you try writing, I don't know, if you try counting to 1000, you will make a mistake on the way, not because you cannot count, but because you're just a human being. And the properly designed system should be designed to absorb this error, not crash all at once. So one thing is just saying, oh, it was human error because somebody, I don't know, moved a plug from the wall. Yes, there were this kind of disaster caused by something like that. Yeah, it was a mistake, but it wasn't a root cause of behind the fact that the system could be put down by just one plug or just one typo in the code or something like that. So I'm strongly advocating for analyzing and looking for the underlying mechanism, what could be improved in the system itself, not to just find somebody to blame. It is much more difficult and definitely would usually generate much more work than sentencing somebody's personal file, but in the long run, it's much more productive.
All right, Adam. So you you describe yourself as a BS detector. You know, in the corporate world, there's a lot of success theater. You know, people tend to sugarcoat the status reports. You know, they make it look all green, even when a project might actually be burning down. I like to know, why do you think people are so afraid to report a failure early when it's cheap and when it's cheap to fix rather than later when it's a catastrophe?
My experience, both professional and from observations and studies I'm doing, I would say there are two problems or challenges. First is just how our perception works. We, in the fast-paced organizations, we value problem solvers and confidency, not problem makers. Subconsciously, we consider people who point problems or risks as potential showstoppers or troublemakers. That's not being rewarded as much as maybe it should. But something that is much easier to fix in the organization is this blameless approach. In the organizations that do not follow the blameless culture and punish for the mistakes, punish for problems, punish for disasters, people naturally start hiding their issues, and it's not that the issue didn't appear because it wasn't said out loud. It's just people just hope they won't be caught red-handed, and then the cost of fixing is one thing. It would be detected later. Second, besides the cost of fixing, which grew during that time, you will also have the cost of finding the root cause. Even if it was about that earlier, everything would be easier. But that's a natural consequence of organization that blames for mistake. It happens all over again in the history of organizations. It's visible very clearly.
All right. So, Adam, you are the author of IT Dictionary and the book series Fuckup Almanac. So, yeah, I'd like to know exactly what these books are about. Just give us an overview of your books and your motivation behind starting to write these books and who the ideal readers are.
Okay, so maybe let's start with my debut, which was IT Dictionary. The title might sound boring, but it is actually a satirical book. The subtitle says something because it is a survival guide for devs, dreamers, and people who pretend that their job has structure. So it's not something you would expect from the typical dictionary. It basically takes the typical corporate terms, might be it in a core IT, be it agile, corporation, or a startup, or very trendy nowadays, AI, what people say and how it sounds like and what it really means under the corporate fluff. So this is pure satire translating or explaining how the IT industry works. Who is it for? Well, I like to think that the audience is quite broad because definitely it has a huge cathartic value for people who are in the industry, for tech professionals. But the book itself was started as a translation guide for a person working in in legal departments, but in IT company. And I wanted to provide a set of translations what people in IT say and what it really means. So basically translation of the internal jargon that every profession has. It grew much bigger than I expected, but reception is that it is very good for people working in professional environments, corporate, big companies working in IT, or even thinking about joining this industry. But like I say, it is a satirical approach, partially to prove that I am from the industry. Fuckup Almanac, on the other hand, is something much more serious. So at some point, I noticed that current culture is full of celebrating success. If you look through, especially, I don't know, LinkedIn wall, you will have success after success after success. Everybody is successful. It's pretty much inevitable. But as we all know, that's not how look. There is even a term for that, survivorship bias, that I wanted to challenge. I started, on one hand, looking at the success stories, but I realized they are pretty much impossible to reproduce. There's always multiple factors, including luck, circumstances, and many other companies doing the same thing but not succeeding. So it's not possible to reproduce, and the learning value is much lower than we would like to admit. So I decided to go the other way around, look at the failures. All the companies, all projects have some hiccups, and they are much more deterministic than successes. If you repeat everything the same way, you can be certain that the failure will happen. There is no much less smaller amount of luck behind the failure, and the value of the learning is much bigger. So that's the core philosophy behind the book. When I started writing, I thought that it would be just one book. When I started writing, I realized it wouldn't be one book. So, especially considering that I didn't want to make it, let's put it bluntly, I didn't want to make it a disaster born and just collection of funny or not so funny case studies. I wanted to use those histories as to illustrate how certain aspect works. So my first volume, which was just released, is describing how foundations of digital world work. So basically how computers compute, communicate, how they remember data, how we protect to make sure that the systems are alive even if something underneath is not. That required explaining some complex concepts, but I also wanted to break the archetype of nerd basement dweller in checkered shirt, and you know what I mean, I hope. So I wanted to make it available for any curious mind, no matter for technical background. So you can read the book with absolutely no knowledge about computers. I truly hope it will be still easy to understand, and well, initial readings confirm. Who is it for? Just curious minds or professionals also. I checked it on my 12-year-old nephew and some 20 years old experienced seasoned professionals or academic professors. They found it interesting, attractive for different reasons, but still it kind of proves quite broad scope.
All right, Adam. So, via your books and your personal principles, you believe in radical simplicity, but yet, as humans, we tend to often make things complicated. So, I'd like to know from your own point of view, why do some people find it hard to actually keep things simple?
Because I would correct a little bit. Most people find it making things simple difficult, and it's not their fault. It's just the reality. Making stuff simple is much more difficult than making things complex. It might be counterintuitive, but making something simple requires full understanding of the topic ahead of time, and some over time also some courage to simplify. Let's put it, let's compare it to, I don't know, architecture. If you want to design a beautiful palace, if you have all the parameters up front, you can design consistent, beautiful structure, like no Neuschwanstein castle from Disney logo. You know the size, you know the requirements, you know the budget, you can design it. On the other hand, if you start with, I don't know, a 2, then you decide to add, okay, we need to add, I don't know, living room, then we add some kitchen, storage, bedroom. Each time we add just a small box next to each other, we end up with Frankenstein, not a consistent, simple, thought through construction. The same is with any project, actually. If we spend time to understand the problem we are trying to solve, we can build something simpler than if we just react to whatever we find over time. Courage to simplify is, if we go with this analogy to the Frankenstein building, at some point, if you realize that, I don't know, this kitchen placed here wouldn't fit, you need to have the guts to demolish it and build something else in this place. But you already invested, and that would be considered wasteful, which is difficult. This happens exactly this happens in the software. We solve the problems as they appear, but removing the parts of code or functionalities that were added and are not needed anymore is psychologically much more difficult than just continue building, and we end up with something complex.
That was a very insightful response. So, for our listeners who want to go read your books, subscribe to your newsletters, or connect with you, so here is the best place for them to go.
I would recommend just visit my website, www.adamkorga.com. You'll find all the resources there, including newsletter that you mentioned, my blog, links to LinkedIn where you can contact me. You will find email if you want to write me, drop me some message. And maybe the most important information about books that I already published and the ones that I'm currently working on, which is probably no surprise, and volumes of already mentioned Fuckup Almanac.
All right, Adam, thank you for sharing that with us. It's been an insightful conversation with you, and I'm excited to have you on the show today. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for having me, and well,